Robbie's on his way here. Joins in.
Wait, hold on. Do I have to unmute again? No.
No, you're good. Yes,
Okay,
stay up recording.
good. We're up to something. Yud Gimel Amid Aleph. The two dots. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down. 3 words before the end of the line for abundance. We had a machlokes in the Mishnah between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim whether we have to worry that the Kohen Gadol will die and set aside another wife. Rabbi Yehuda said, not the Kohen Gadol will die. Excuse me, that his wife may die. Kohen Gadol has to have a wife. It says v'chiker ba'ado bi'ad beiso. Beiso means his wife, so he has to have a wife. So Rabbi Yehuda says, well, we prepare another wife just in case. The Chachamim say, no. If you're gonna have to worry that the wife will die, then maybe you have to worry that the substitute will die, and you'll have to set aside like an endless supply of wives. So that's not necessary. But we do set aside another Kohen Gadol in the event that maybe this Kohen Gadol is going to become Tameh, and therefore you have to have another Kohen Gadol as in the waiting room as an understudy. So Abananami Hakaishi. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Wait, I think actually we should start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. We have 3 little words in the end line which says Rabbi Yehuda, where we're actually referencing the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Afisha Chemes Maskirin. Yehuda says we also prepare another wife just in case this wife will die. But Abananami Hakaishi L'Shema. The Chachamim also are worried about possibilities, right? They worry that maybe the Kohen Gadol will become Tameh, so we prepare a Kohen Gadol substitute. So Amilach Rabbanan, no, that the Chachamim have the following distinction: Tuma shchicha, misa lo shchicha. It's much more common that there's things that can happen. That there could be some spittle that might come on the Kohen Gadol from an Am Haaretz, for example. And other things that are out of the Kohen Gadol's control that will cause the Kohen Gadol to become tamei, but misa lo shchicha. But people don't usually die. It's not. Thank God that there isn't the same fear or the same commonality or frequency of a spouse dying, so that we're not as worried about. So amulo. And they said to Rabbi Yehuda, if you're going to set aside a substitute wife, then you'd have to set aside 2 or 3 or 10 or 20. And Cain ain't Ludav herself. It'll just you'll have to, why stop there? So Shabbat Kamila to Rabbi Yehuda. That's a good retort that the Chachamim said to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda. So what's Rabbi Yehuda's response to that? Well, his response is Amalach. Let me say the chashin. Let me say tati lo chashin. He says, no, you know what? It really isn't that frequent. So if we're going to worry, we only worry about one wife dying, but we're not really worried about that it's just going to go on forever, and that the 2 wives are going to die in a row. But let me train chashin, and the chachamim say, well, really it's so infrequent even for one wife to die. So if you're going to worry about one, you should similarly worry about 2. The statistical probabilities are not so different. Why don't the Chachamim say the same thing with respect to their own reasoning? Since they said that if you're going to worry about Misa, about a wife dying, you have to worry about even 2. So why don't they say the same idea with respect to worrying that if the Kohen is going to become Tommy and I need a substitute, so maybe I need multiple substitutes because maybe the substitute Kohen will also become Tommy. So the Rabban and the Chachamim can say, no, that I'm not worried about more than one. Okay, so I'm worried about one because the tumah has some shchichas to it. As I said, it could be a little saliva coming out from Nam Haaretz, or the Kohen Gadol could be Roa Keri. They have a wet dream, but otherwise, but we don't worry. We don't overly worry. Why is that? So because Kohen is Zarisu. Kohen Gadol Zarisu. Kohen Gadol, he comes from Kohanim, who in general we say Kohanim is reason name. He's capable of being careful not to become Tama. You can't. Misa you can't control. That's no matter how careful somebody is. So Misa sometimes it just happens. But when it comes to Tuma, you can have a certain amount of control and diligence to prevent it from happening. Well, if that's true, as the Gemara Zarisu, Namaskin Kohen Acher. So then why is it that we set aside even one Kohen Gadol to be a substitute if the first Kohen Gadol is capable of being so careful not to become Tameh? So the answer is no, that this is what part of what helps him to become tummy, because he doesn't want another Kohen Gadol to take over. So that makes him nervous. Says, hey, I don't want somebody else to steal the show from me. So I'm going to be even more careful than ever not to become tummy. Kevin Davdin late Sarah Koshikain Demisdarius face, for sure he's going to be even more careful. Misagile bit takanta. So now the Gemara asks that why is it good enough to just have, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that we set aside a substitute wife, a wife in waiting, that we set her aside in case the first wife dies. Why is that good enough? She's not actually married to him, but come Yom Kippur. So takanta means just setting her aside behazmana, as Rashi says that you're preparing her, but she's not actually married to him yet. Based on Rahman v'hakla besohu. It says that he needs to be married to the woman, and this is not. This is only a wife in waiting. She's not actually his wife, the second woman. So the Gemara says, no problem. We could easily resolve that issue. The Mekadesh law, he marries her. He gives her kiddushin. He gives her tabas in front of Adam. So they're betrothed to each other. But beso means that she has to actually be his full-fledged wife. There has to not only be kiddushin, but there has to be nisuin as well. So we say, okay, we can do that too. The kanisla, that he actually has nisuin, they have chuppah, sheva brachos, the whole big production. It all takes place prior to Yom Kippur, so she actually is his wife. So this is a little bit problematic because the Kohen Gadol, even though according to biblical law, of course, before Rabbeinu Gershom, a man could be married to more than one wife, that doesn't apply to the Kohen Gadol. So come Yom Kippur, he really has to have Beiso, only one wife. You can't have Shnei Batim. He's not allowed to have two houses. He's not allowed to have two wives. The Torah says he has to atone for his Beiso, which is in the singular, meaning one wife. He's not allowed to have two wives, the Kohen Gadol. So you can't, set this aside beforehand. I mean, there's a whole discussion, similar discussion in Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi makes a suggestion, well, maybe we should have him just set aside the woman and he'll marry her on Yom Kippur in case his first wife dies. So he'll marry her on Yom Kippur. The Bible doesn't go along with that because you're not allowed to make a kinyan by getting married on a Shabbos or a Yontif. So that's kind of like off limits. And there's a famous chiddush here, just that. No, but that's not good enough. The Gemara just say you need to have the. That's for sure a kinyan as well. So Rabbi Kiva Eger has a famous comment in which he says, well, why don't we contemplate? We do all the acts beforehand with the stipulation that none of it will be chal for her to be his wife, unless the first wife dies in Yom Kippur, and then the chalos of the kinyan will take place in Yom Kippur. So you perform the kinyan of the marriage before Yom Kippur and have the chalos, have it only be effective afterwards. So based on this, he has a chiddush that you're not allowed to make a kinyan before a Shabbos or Yontif, for the kinyan to be chal on Shabbos or Yontif. That also is considered to be a violation of making a kinyan on Shabbos Yontif. That is relevant for this year in terms of selling chametz, because normally we sell chametz Erev Pesach, but you can't do an Erev Pesach falls down on Shabbos. So some suggest, well, when you sell the chametz 2 days before Pesach on Erev Shabbos, which is 2 days before Pesach, stipulate with the non-Jewish purchaser, that the kinyan, that his kinyan will only be effective on Shabbos morning. So the problem is Rabbi Kiva Eger stands in the way of that solution. So that's why we didn't employ that solution. Okay, anyway, so the Gemara says, no problem. He doesn't come into Yom Kippur being married to her because the Hadam Megarish law, perfect solution. That, he marries the second wife before Yom Kippur, but then he divorces her before Yom Kippur. Perfect. But the problem is, once he divorces her, she's no longer his wife. So that's a Megarish law. Hadra Kushi on the Duchta. Wait a second. If he divorces her, then we're left with the same problem. We're back to square one. Because Lamaisa, now he doesn't have a substitute wife anymore. Okay, so Lo Tzricha de Megarish al Tanai. So the Gemara now is going to have all kinds of different scenarios, none of which, as Rashi points out, make any sense. So each one is going to have a kasha on them, but as you're scratching your head, with the kashas, you'll be thinking to yourself, wait a second, there's like more than one kasha, like 20 kashas in each of these scenarios. So Rashi says, don't worry about it too much. The main thing is that we're just eventually going to get to the conclusion. So just kind of like hold, your objections until the very end, and just wait until the dust settles. So lo tzricha de megarish la al tanai, that he divorces the second wife on condition, so that the divorce isn't necessarily going to be effective. She still has the capacity to be his wife. It's Amala Harezik Itech. He says, this is your divorce. Amanas Shetamusi, on condition that you die. So in the event that you die, so then you're divorced. But if you live, so then you're my wife. Viduma lo maisa. So says the Gemara. No, but the problem with that is that there is this possibility. I dare say even a probability that she's not going to die, and therefore the get is not going to be effective. And come Yom Kippur, it's going to turn out that we will discover that he was really married to two wives. So he's not based, so it's batim. Batim. Ella de Amala, rather, okay, a second possibility. He says to wife number two, understudy wife before Yom Kippur, he says, this is your get. Amenas shalotamusi. Okay, perfect. So he says that this is your get on condition that you don't die. So it's only if she dies will it turn out that the get is effective. So Elam Misa Megarshala. So if she doesn't die, so then it'll turn out that he had divorced her. Misa ha kaimahach. Misa ha kaimahach. And in the event that she does die, so the other one is around. Vidilma hilo misa. So we say, but there's a problem over here, which is that, as we mentioned, maybe she's not going to die. Bahavale gita tahai gita, and the get therefore is going to be a good get. And umaisa chaverta, but the first wife is going to die. Remember, just getting back to the original concern in the Mishnah, what we were worried about was not what's going to happen to the second wife. We were worried what's going to happen to the first wife. So maybe what we were worried about is really going to happen, and the first wife is actually going to die. Become below the bias, and then we'll be stuck because this one's not going to die. So it'll turn out that she was retroactively that she was divorced before Yom Kippur. The other one will die, and let's say at the beginning of Yom Kippur, and now the Kohen Gadol is stuck. He's not going to have a wife. Ela de Amala. Rather, he says to her, Amanas shetamus achas mikem. That he gives a get to the second wife on condition that one of them die. In other words, the get will only be effective if either she dies or the first wife dies. So then the get will be effective. So misaha kaimahach misahach hakaimaha. So if the second wife dies, the first one is around. If the first wife dies, the second one is around. No, but the problem is that only works if one of them actually dies. But maybe neither of them are going to die. If neither of them die, so it turns out that the get that he gave the second wife is not effective at all, because it's only going to be effective amanas that one of them dies. And if neither of them dies, so then we have the big problem. The Kohen Gadol was married to two wives, which is no good. Also, if the get only really becomes effective at the moment that she dies, we have a principle from Rava that a get has to be given in such a way that there will be creases, so that the wife will be rid of her husband at some point during her lifetime. There has to be the possibility that at some point during her lifetime, the creases will be fine. You can make different conditions that will be imposed upon the wife, but the conditions have to be such that they can be fulfilled before her death. If it's not going to be able to be fulfilled until her death, that's not considered to be a valid condition, in the sense that it won't be a valid get, because it's not a creases. You don't have a cutting off of the relationship between the husband and the wife within the wife's lifetime. So any kind of condition says, oh, this get will only be valid when you die, that doesn't work. Or if you don't die. So Rabbi said, if you give a get to your wife, and you say it's on condition that she doesn't drink any wine during my entire lifetime, okay, that's not such a problem, because the husband, we don't know how long the husband's going to live. But he adds, and during your lifetime, you can't drink wine your entire life. So at any moment during her life, she'll be 95 years old. It'll turn out that we don't know that the get is effective yet, because she might, if she takes a sip of wine, it'll turn out that the get's not an effective get. So ain sekrisas, so that's not considered to be a valid get. But if it's only like somebody else's lifetime, says, okay, this is, your get on condition that you don't drink wine during, the entire lifetime of, some other guy or shmerel, hareze krisus. So that is a good get because it could theoretically come to closure, at some point during her lifetime, shmerel could die. Ella, so therefore, these conditions, Menashe, Tamusi, and so forth, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. That's not considered to be it's not considered to be a valid get. So Ella de Amar, rather, the formulation would have to be like this: Hareze gitech Amenash lo tamus chaver tech. That he says to the second wife before Yom Kippur, after he's married her, and so forth, he gives her a get, and he says, "This is your get on condition that the first wife doesn't die." It's only going to be a valid get if the first wife doesn't die. Ilo misa chaberta migarsha. So in the event that the first wife doesn't die, great. So it turned out that he divorced the second wife, before Yom Kippur. That works out. B'misaha, and if the first wife should die, hakaimaha. So then she's here and she's considered to be his wife. So we say, yeah, but when would this is like the best solution yet, right? I mean, this seems to actually work. But we say no, but there's a problem because maybe the first wife is not going to die like at night. She's not going to die like at the very beginning of Yom Kippur. She'll die like halfway through the avoda. Okay, she'll like sometime in the mid morning or the early afternoon. Maybe the first wife is going to die in the middle of the day. To get the Tahalab Getahu. So it'll turn out that the get that was given to the first wife is no longer considered to be a valid get, and the first wife, I'm sorry, the get that was given to the second wife is no longer considered to be a valid get, and therefore the second wife really is married to the Kohen Gadol, and the first wife was also married to the Kohen Gadol until midday. So for half of the avoda was performed with the Kohen Gadol having two wives. So that doesn't work either. Okay, so we're now on Yud Gimel base, the second line. Rather, he gives her the get on condition that he gives the second wife the get on condition that the first wife does die. No, but that doesn't work either because maybe the first wife will die. And it'll turn out that the get that he gave to the second wife will therefore be a valid get, and then there'll be no wives. So come late below bias. Ella dimgarish lula travayu. Rather, we have to now come up with a totally new, out of the box idea. This has all been pretty out of the box anyway, but now we're going to go even more out of the box. He gives both of them gittin. That's the best way to ensure that you'll be married to at least one wife. You divorce them both. But he divorces them on conditions that will enable him to only be married to one. So one of them he says, let's say to the second wife, he says, this is your get on condition that the first wife doesn't die. We said that one, wasn't so bad, except we worry what might happen in the middle if the first one dies in the middle of the avoda, right? Let's say to the first wife, he says, the Beis HaKnesses. This is your get only on condition that you don't enter into shul or you don't enter into the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, there's a good solution that if it's clear, let's say that the second wife is about to die, so the first one can then go into the Beis HaKnesses in order to annul her get because her get is only going to be valid if she doesn't enter into the Beis HaKnesses. So she can enter into the Beis HaKnesses a moment before the other one dies to ensure that she will remain married. So we say Vidilma, no, but you might have a problem, which is as follows. Vidilma lo maisa chaverta. Maybe the second wife is not going to die. Or like this, the first wife is not going to. When he gave the get to the second wife, he said, "Amenash lo tamas chavertech," that it's on condition that the first wife doesn't die. So v'dilma lo ma'isa chaverta, v'lo aylehi the Beis HaKnesses, and the first one is not going to go into the Beis HaKnesses, in which case both gittin are going to end up being valid. V'havale gitta de travayu gitta become lay below bias, and therefore he's not going to end up being married to anybody because we can't necessarily trust that the wife will know to enter into the Beis HaKnesses. So therefore, we're kind of in this this uncertain state where it's possible that both gittin will end up becoming effectuated. Ela l'chada amala. Rather, what he can do is like this: to one wife, it doesn't matter to which. So we'll just say to one wife, he'll say, "Ela l'chada amala hareze gitech amanash lo tamas kaver." Let's do it like this. He says to one wife, and this is going to be the solution that works. So we'll try to pay attention to this one in particular. That he says to one wife, "This is your get on condition that the other one doesn't die. If the other one doesn't die, he doesn't need the first one, right? Because he has the other one. So harei zegitech amanash l'tamas kavertech ulachada amala." And to the other one, he says harei zegitech amanas she'akanes ani the Beis HaKnesses. This is your get on condition that I'm going to enter into the Beis HaKnesses. Because whatever the Beis HaKnesses is, maybe some separate shul, because because as Tosfos points out that the Kohen Gadol is a Zoriz, that he's in charge of like the whole situation, and he has presumably a whole staff working under him, so he'll know like if he needs to enter into the Beis HaKnesses at any point where one of them is about to die. In order to ensure that the other one will still be married to him, because the condition of her get was only that he doesn't enter the Beis HaKnesses, so he'll make sure to enter into the Beis HaKnesses. He's capable of knowing more, and also we assume he's more Zaris in general than the wives themselves, so that's why we don't rely upon the wife for this condition of not entering into the Beis HaKnesses. Because what's going to happen? Because if one wife dies, so then the other wife to whom he said that this is only your get, if the other one doesn't die, will be married to him, because the other one in fact did die. And if the one that he said that this is your get, this is your get on condition that the other one doesn't die, is about to die herself. So then he very quickly can run into the Beis HaKnesses in order to nullify the get that he gave to the other one. Hakaimaha. He'll have to run into the Beis HaKnesses before the death of the first one, because of the fact that the get needs to be chal needs to be chal, as we said, needs to be clarified before the person's actual death. So therefore, he'll run and he'll take care of that in order to ensure that her get will be a valid get. So ma'ika l'meimer, what are you going to say? Dilma ma'isa chaverta. This is the case that we're talking about, where he has to run into the Beis HaKnesses. That you're worried that the one who's going to die is going to die b'palga da avoda, va'avad le avoda lemafreya b'shnei batim, and it'll turn out that for half of the day he had two wives. So this is what he does. Ichazi la de kabaya lememas. If he sees that the first one is about to die, so kadim iu ba'ayla Beis HaKnesses. So then he runs into the Beis HaKnesses. When he runs into the Beis HaKnesses, umashri the gita daha gita lemafreya, he causes the get of the one that he said that he's only going to give her a get on condition that that he enters into the Beis HaKnesses. So this is great. So he's going to enter into the Beis HaKnesses. He's going to cause that get, if that's the woman who's about to die, right? If that's the woman who's about to die, namely the one that that he gave her the get on condition that he enters into the Beis HaKnesses, if she's about to die, so he's going to cause her get to be chal lemafreya. And the other wife's get is not going to be chal because that wife's get is only chal in the event that the other wife doesn't die, and now the other wife is dying, so therefore he doesn't have the problem of the shnei batim. So maskif love of Asi b'tema of Abiva. So Abasi asked the kasha. Did everybody follow that, by the way?
To run the base Knesset to make sure that this, is okay.
Well, yeah, you know.
I really don't get how that works.
Oh, okay. But you need a little bit of a scorecard for this, Eddie. But the idea is that what we're worried is that even according to this foolproof plan, you still have the problem that it might not become effectuated until the middle of the day. So in order to prevent that from, and therefore you might end up that it'll have two wives until the middle of the day. But because of the fact that he can trigger either get to be effective retroactive because he gave both of them conditional get in, so therefore he has the ability that to take affirmative steps in order to cause the second wife to have been divorced from him retroactively from the beginning of Yom Kippur by just running into the Beis HaKnesses. And according to the other condition, I'm sorry, yeah. No, because they say she's really in bad shape, if it would be kind of like a sudden, like 2-second heart attack, that might be a problem, but we're assuming that, maybe that if death is going to happen, then it's more probable that it will happen in such a way that there'll be like a few moments that they'll be able to put the person on oxygen or whatever and keep them going, for a few minutes.
When the Torah says "V'chiver ba'ado ve'ad beito," this is what the Torah had in mind. Is that what it is? I mean,
the Torah had in mind for sure he has to be married. Leisman the Paul, just the Chachamim aren't really worried about this.
right.
But once Rabbi Yehuda says that we have to set aside a second wife, it becomes very complicated because she can't already be married to him. So you have to have all of these different conditions. You'll say, well, Rabbi Yehuda, it didn't sound like Rabbi Yehuda was saying this is going to be really complicated, guys. You figure it out, right? Yeah. Sounded like he wasn't really concerned about this, but the Gemara says, well, but objectively speaking, you have to be concerned about this because you have to be concerned that there's a need to have two wives, right? So again, if the one who's about to die is the one that he made the Tanai, on condition that I enter into the Beis HaKnesses, so great. So he just like runs in and she's about to die. If the one who's about to die is the other one, so then no problem. Then the first one, will turn out to have been a divorce because her condition was on condition the other one doesn't die, the other one didn't die, and he just won't enter into the Beis HaKnesses. Okay, so Eddie, those are the two studies. So Maskif La Ravasi, B'itema Rav Avira Elamiata. If we're worried that whenever it says Beiso, that it means that it can only be married to one wife. So let's say a man dies without any children, and he had two wives. Well, we know there's a Yibum situation, and both of those two wives, can then, get, remarried through Yibum. So Elameata, Shtei Yavamas Abaz V'Bayiseka Lo Yisyaivmu. So it should follow that there shouldn't be Yibum in that situation where a man had two wives because the parsha of Yibum speaks about a bias. It speaks about a person having only, it sounds like according to this reasoning, having only one wife because it says bias echad. Where does it say bias echad? Lehakim beis achiv, right? There's such a pasuk. I'm looking on the side of the Gemara to find that the right. Okay, 1 second. Arzi, what's the exact pasuk? Asher lo yivneh as beis achiv. It says asher lo yivneh as beis achiv. So therefore, it only has bias in the singular. It's beis achiv. Yeah. So okay. So it says bias. So therefore, there's only one bias. So what is it? So why then? Do we allow yibum when there are multiple wives and there are multiple batim? So yivimta riba. No, because the pasuk says v'imlo yakpos ish lakacha says yivimta, but also yivimta hashara. So since the word yivimta appears twice, so therefore that allows for multiple wives in the parsha of Yibum. So masking Ravina mitema of Shaviyel miata arusa l'tisiyabim. But an arusa should not be subject if a man was only betrothed to a woman and then he died without children. She shouldn't be subject to yibum because it says bias shilo yibnez beis achiv, and a bias, as we just said, implies actual nisuin, and erison wouldn't be good enough. So we say no because the pasuk does say that in it that it includes a woman. It says lo siya esha sames hachutza l'ishazar hachutza l'rabis arusa. The word hachutza, that she's an outsider, includes a woman who hadn't yet come fully into the house of the deceased, that there wasn't a full-fledged nisuin, and yet she's also included in the parsha of Yibum. Okay, Tana Rabbanan.
From Yibum, we can see bias doesn't actually refer to the wife, it refers to kids. So if the Kohen Gadol has kids, wouldn't that be from
No, because no, it means bias means that Shilim Nes Beis Achiv means he refused to marry his brother's former wife in order to build a family with her. But you build a family with your bias. You have to have the bias to build your family. The bias is only a reference to the wife. Yeah, the bias is a reference to the wife herself. You know, that's you have to build from the wife. You have to build a family from the wife. So Tana Rabbanan, Kohen Gadol Makrivonim Beinu Ochel. Kohen Gadol, the halacha is this upcoming week's parsha. Parsha's Emor. The Kohen Gadol is it says La Viva Limo Lo Yitzama Mina Mikdash Lo Yitzei Lo Yechalel Eis Mikdash Shelokav. Right, that the Kohen Gadol, even when one of his close relatives dies, he still has to do the avoda, but he doesn't eat. He's not allowed to eat. Says the Gemara from the Kachim. Because he's only allowed to perform the avoda, but since he's an onen, if a close relative dies, the halacha is an onen can't eat ma'aser sheni and kavachomer can't eat kachim. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer, kol hayom. So Rabbi Yehuda says, yeah, that's only the entire day. Or what does it mean? Kol hayom. What's the chiddush of kol hayom? So my kol hayom amarava lo nitzachel labiyam mitoch beso. That it means that kol hayom, we're going to force him to do avoda. So even if he was home, kind of like mourning quietly the loss of his relatives, we don't let him stay home. We say, sorry, Kohen Gadol, you got to go to work. You got to go to the base of Mikdash and do your avoda. So Amalei Abaye hashta during the entire day. So Amalei Abaye hashta Rabbi Yehuda afukim afkinan lei. So according to, this doesn't really make sense. How could Rabbi Yehuda say such a thing? According to Rabbi Yehuda, if you have a regular Kohen, okay, let's say it's not a Kohen Gadol, it's a Kohen Hedyot who's in the middle of doing avoda, and he discovers that a close relative dies, we actually tear him away from the avoda in the middle. He's doing avoda on the altar. Discovers that a close relative died. Rabbi Yehuda, we force him to interrupt the avoda in the middle. And only Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi says, no, let him finish that avoda, and then he'll begin his aninos. Now Rabbi Yehuda was so strict in the case of Kohen Hedyot that he actually forces him to stop the avoda. So you're telling me the Kohen Gadol, who's not in the middle of an avoda, when he discovers that a close relative dies, we're actually going to force him into the base of Mikdash to do avoda. That doesn't make sense. Rather, what's kol hayom? What does that mean? Lomar shein oved kol hayom. It means no, the entire day he shouldn't do avodah. So we have a drabanan rule that really on a deraisa level, the Kohen Gadol could do avodah. It's talking about a regular day. On a regular day that he had a close relative die. So the Kohen Gadol, we're not talking about Yom Kippur now. On a regular day. So he really could do the avoda according to Torah law, but we're not going to. But mitra rabbanan, we're not going to have him do avoda because on a regular day he doesn't have to do avoda. Until the nighttime. Because we're worried that he's going to eat. In other words, we don't allow him to do the avoda on korbanos that he could eat. Presumably, he would bring his chavitim. Presumably, but he doesn't do avoda on those korbanos that he might end up eating, where, let's say to bring somebody's korban, shlomim or chatos or something like that. So Amalei Ravada Baraba the Rava, Umigos of Rabbi Yehuda Shema Yoichel. That since when do we find that Rabbi Yehuda has this requirement? Because Rabbi Yehuda said Kol Hayom that we're not going to allow a Kohen Gadol who became an onain to do avoda because we're worried maybe he's going to eat from the korban. Shema Tamus Ishto. That Rabbi Yehuda says that the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, we set aside an extra wife for him in case his first wife dies. And if it turns out that his wife dies, then he's going, even if I have a second wife in the waiting, he's still going to be an onain with respect to the first wife. And it'll turn out that, he's doing, as he continues doing avoda that day, he's going to do avoda despite the fact that he's an onain. And Rabbi Yehuda doesn't say that we're not going to allow him to do avoda. He doesn't say, oh, we have to have a different Kohen Gadol. So we say, no, that's Yom Kippur. We're talking about the rest of the year. He's going to bring like a korban, chatas the rest of the year. We're worried, for somebody, worried he's going to eat it. Hasam, since it's Yom Kippur, Kim the Yom Kippur, on Yom Kippur, nobody eats. He's also not going to come to eat anything from his avoda because he knows that it's Yom Kippur. But the other days of the week, everybody else is eating, and all the other Kohanim are eating, so he might come to eat himself. And now we ask the question, why would he be an onain altogether? We just came through with these convoluted cases that it turns out that if his first wife dies, he had given her a conditional get, that it will turn that became effective retroactively when she died. So it'll turn out that he was never really married to her. So therefore, he wouldn't be an onain for a woman who dies, whom he divorced the previous day, who wasn't his wife at the time that she died. So why are we worried about this altogether? Garsha, he gave her a conditional get that became effective when she died. So we say, so we say, no, it's true. He wouldn't be an onain according to Torah law if he had just given his wife a get. True, de milo mitrid, but he loved her. He only gave her a get in order that there not be a problem with his having two wives or no wives on Yom Kippur. But it's not because he hated her or anything. She was his wife. He had this very close relationship with her. And therefore, even if he's not technically halachically an onain, he's going to be emotionally an onain. And therefore, he's not going to be able to concentrate properly on his avodah. Very interesting idea that there could be a possibility of avelus for somebody who is not halachically a closer relative, because there was a woman whom the person had divorced the previous day. We see from here that, this comes up sometimes. A person's parent dies and they weren't halachically their parent. They were an adoptive parent. But we say it's still shaykh to have a velus because with certain people, you just have a very strong emotional bond. So we have the same idea over here with respect to this wife. Yeah, technically he's not an onain, but emotionally he's an onain. Very interesting concept. Okay, and Naya Mishnah, Kol Shivas Yamim Zoik as the Dava Maktir Sektarius and Meitiv Seneros. So this entire period that the Kohen Gadol is set aside, that he is sequestered to prepare for Yom Kippur, the 7-day period. So he does all the avodas. He sprinkles the blood on the mizbech, and he brings the ketayos. He burns the incense and Meitiv Seneros, and he prepares and lights the candles. And the korban tamid that's brought every single morning, he brings all the avarim up on the ramp of the mizbech. And all the other days of the year, when it's not Yom Kippur, so the Kohen Gadol doesn't have to do avoda on those days, other than bringing his chavitim. He doesn't have to do avoda, but if he wants to, he may. Because the Kohen Gadol is allowed to be in the front of the line, so to speak. There's another mishmar that is doing their service that week, and each day there's a different family unit that does the service of that mishmar. The Kohen Gadol can show up and say, I want to do the avoda today. I want to take from the choicest part of the korban that has been offered. He has that right to the entire year. As the Gemara says, Montana. Who's the Tana of our Mishnah? So I'm Rav Chisda Loka Rabbi Akiva. Our Mishnah can't be going like Rabbi Akiva. Why not? The Rabbi Akiva Matosh and up alav hazah. That's himeso, because all of the 7 days he gets hazah. We said that we said previously we sprinkle to make sure he's going to be tahor on Yom Kippur, so we sprinkle from the May Para on the Kohen Gadol. And whenever, and Rabbi Akiva has a principle that whenever you have Mechatas sprinkled on you, so you become like Tomei on a Durabanan level, and you can't do Avoda then. So Hechi Avid Avoda, the Tanya, because the Brisa says, Risa Torah La Tomei, that when you have the sprinkling of the one Kohen is sprinkling on, the person who was a Tomei Mace, he sprinkles on him, Ala Tomei Tahor, Vela Tahor Tomei. So it sounds like that the Tahor sprinkles on the Tameh, and then we know the Tameh is going to become Tahor. Well, if the Tameh, who is the second person in the Pasuk, right, becomes a Tahor, so it follows that the Tahor is going to become Tameh. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says that it's an equation, that we deal in opposites. So through the Mechatas, the Tameh becomes Tahor, and the Tam becomes Tameh. But the main thing is that for our purposes is that the one who if you were tahor, so then the mechatas causes you to become tamei. So the Kohen Gadol, who's getting it sprinkled upon him, he starts out being tahor. Once it's sprinkled upon him, we're going to treat him like he's tamei. It sounds like from Rabbi Akiva said Raisa actually. The Chachamim say no. The purpose of the pasuk is ala tamei. Is not to teach you that only if he's tamei does he become tahor, but if he was tahor and he had mechata sprinkled on him, so then he's going to become a tamei. That's not what the pasuk is teaching you, right? According to Rabbi Akiva, just to clarify, it's going in the person who's receiving the mechata sprinkled on him. So he says if he was tamei, he becomes tahor, but if he was tahor, he's going to become tamei. The Chachamim say no, that's not what it means. It just means that that it's only considered to be a sprinkling in the event that you sprinkled on somebody who is eligible to receive Tumah. That's the Rizah Torah Latame. It has to be somebody who's eligible to receive Tumah. So if you sprinkled on somebody who was eligible to receive Tumah, you took this hyssop branch and you dipped it in the Mechatis and you sprinkled it. So then that was considered to be a good sprinkling, meaning it's a valid Mechatis sprinkling. So whatever Mechatis is left in the moisture, whatever moisture Mechatis is left in the hyssop branch, so that you can continue to sprinkle on somebody else. So Mahi, how does this play out? Because the Tananis, the Mishnah says, a little complicated, but this is how Rashi learns it. Niskavin lazas of the behema, you had in mind the one who's sprinkling the mechatos had in mind to sprinkle it on an animal. An animal is not mekabel tuma. A live animal, not mekabel tuma. Visa al adam, but doesn't matter. The kavanah is not significant because at the end he did sprinkle it on a human being who is eligible to receive tuma. Good. So then that's considered to be a proper mechatos. Proper, a sprinkling which could have been, done on, in the right way, which was, sprinkled on a person. So whatever remains in the hyssop branch is still valid for mechatos. It hasn't been disqualified. If you have more mechatos, moisture in the hyssop branch that you had dipped into the mechatos, so you can sprinkle that as well. But even if you had in mind to sprinkle on a person, if you ended up sprinkling on an animal who's not susceptible to receive tumah, so even if there's more mechatas left over, you can't sprinkle it because it became puzzle due to the fact that it was sprinkled on an ineligible entity. It was sprinkled on an animal, so therefore the rest of the mechatas becomes ineligible. So that's how the Chachamim would learn Mizah Torah Latomim. My time in the Rabbi Akiva. What's the reason Rabbi Akiva darshans this unusual way? Mizah Torah Latame means that if the person who's getting the mechatas sprinkled on him was tummy, he becomes tar. But if he was tar, then he becomes tamei, which presents a problem with respect to the Kohen Gadol's ability to do avoda during the 7 days of preparation for Yom Kippur, because he's going to have the mechatas sprinkled on him every day. So my time in the Rabbi Akiva, it could have just said that the tar, we already know that the person was tamei. Why does it say Behizah Tahor al Hatamei, that the Tahor Kohen now sprinkles upon the tamei individual? My ala tamei could have just said alav. So the fact that it says on him, why did it say ala tamei on the one who was impure? Shmamina ala tamei tar ala tar tamei. It's to teach me that it's only because he was tamei that the mechatas causes him to be tar. But if he was tar, then mechatas would cause him to be tamei. But in Haile also, and the Chachamim say that no, this pasuk is teaching me that it's only the mechatas has to be sprinkled on a person or something which is eligible to receive tumah as opposed to on a live animal. But here, as far as this principle of whether somebody who was tahor who has mechata sprinkled on him becomes, tamei. Obviously, he doesn't become tamei because I have a kavachomer, right? Im ala tamei tar. If the mechatos has the effect that when it's sprinkled on somebody who is tamei, that person becomes tar. Alatar l'koshekain. So certainly on somebody who is tar, he's going to remain tar. Rabbi Kiva, no. Rabbi Kiva says there's no logic when it comes to paraduma. I didn't come as Shlomo. It's what Shlomo Melech said. This is beyond my comprehension. The whole parsha of paraduma is those kukas the Torah, that it's a whole giant kukah that we can't understand. So it doesn't have to make logical sense. This is what Shlomo Melech also didn't understand. But that's what the Torah says. But Banan and the Chachamim say no. What Shlomo Melech didn't understand was not this law. This is not a real law. What they didn't understand was how the Lamazin love Torah. What they didn't understand was that the person who sprinkles, that person remains tar. The person who is sprinkled upon, that person remains tar. But if somebody else should touch the mechata, should touch the paraduma ashes and concoction, so that person becomes tamei. But no and tamei. So that was what was confusing. Somebody else touches it, he becomes tamei, but the person who sprinkles it remains tahor, and the person who has it sprinkled upon him is tahor, becomes tahor. So that's what Shlomo Melech found to be illogical. Umazet tahor, is that true that the one who sprinkles remains tahor? Vaksib, but doesn't the Torah say that the one who sprinkles it has to launder his clothes, meaning he becomes tamei? So my mazeh, no, that pasuk's not talking about the one who sprinkles; it's talking about somebody who touches. No gear. My mazeh, no gear. Vaksib, mazeh, but it says but it says mazeh. It doesn't say no gear. Vaksib, no gear. But it also says no vaksib mazeh, vaksib no gear. It says both. It says if you look in the psukim, it talks about v'hanogeh b'meni dayit ma'arib, and it says umeya mazeh meni dayit chabes begadab. You can't say that one is the other. They're two different ones. Oh, mazeh by kibus begadim, nogeh lo by kibus begadim. Also, if you look in the pasuk, they have different dinim. You can't say they're the same thing, because the one who sprinkles the mechatas, it says he requires his clothes to be laundered, and the one who only touches it without sprinkling it doesn't require his clothes to be laundered, but they both are considered to be tamei. So how can you say it's the same person? We see that the mazeh independently is tamei. And the my mazeh, no, we can explain. The mazeh is tar, but when the pasuk refers to mazeh, it means a no say. Somebody who's not the one who sprinkles, but somebody who's otherwise carrying mechatas, not necessarily touching it, because there could be an intervening substance between him and the mechatas, and he still becomes tamei by virtue of carrying the mechatas. No say. So why shouldn't the Torah say that explicitly? Why is the Torah confusing us by calling somebody who's carrying it, who's not the sprinkler, calling him the sprinkler? No, Hakamash to teach me something different. Then the one who carries it is only going to be tamei if he carries a shear, the measurement that will be eligible for sprinkling. To be in shear hazah, you need a measurement which is eligible for sprinkling. That works out well according to the opinion. It's a machlokes who says that the hazah, that the sprinkling has to be a certain measurement. One says it doesn't have to be a certain measurement. So how do you explain why the word mazeh was used to teach me the din of no say? So we say no. Yeah, that's a different machlokes. Even according to the opinion that says it doesn't require measurement, that's in terms of how much has to be sprinkled upon the person who's becoming purified. But the amount of mechatas that has to be sitting in the utensil that you're that you're sprinkling from. So there, everybody agrees that it has to have a certain amount of measurement. That's the measurement that it has to be there in order for the one who carries it to become tamei. The Tanan, how much has to be there, and there'll be enough for hazah, so that the heads of the hyssop branches will be able to become moist enough so that there'll be something to sprinkle. So there is a shear. So Abaye says, let's go back to the beginning of the Gemara. Beginning of the Gemara said our Mishnah can't be going according to Rabbi Akiva, because according to Rabbi Akiva, the Kohen Gadol is going to become tamei, and he'll have to go to the mikveh at the end of the day. And he won't be able to do a avoda. He has to wait until the sun sets to become tar every single day. As soon as the mechatas is sprinkled upon him, he can't do avoda. So therefore, our Mishnah says he does the avoda for the 7 days that he's sequestered. Can't be going according to Rabbi Akiva. So we say no. David avoda kule yoma lepanya madu aleh. That he could do avoda the entire day. When is it that we sprinkle the mechatas on him? Only at the very end of the day. The sun's going to set at 5:30 p.m. He does avoda the whole day. We sprinkle the mechatas on him at 5:25 p.m. He goes to the mikveh at 5:28 p.m. So it's before sunset. And parting and everything is perfect. We sprinkle on him at 5:25. He goes to the mikveh at 5:28. And then it's sunset at 5:30. And no problem. The whole day he was able to do a boda and he wasn't done. Okay. And the next day he already went to the mikveh after the sprinkling of the mechadus. So the mission then goes on to say that every single day the Kohen brings the incense and he also cleans the candles in the morning and so forth. So Amma Kataris Beresha Bahadaneros. So it sounds like the order of the morning is first there's the burning of the Kataris and then there's the cleaning of the candles. According to the Rambam, there's also a lighting of the candles in the morning. But we have a kasha because we have a pious that the Kohanim take lots, generally speaking, about who's going to do which avoda. So we have one person who cleans up the mizbeach hapanimi, the inner mizbeach from his ashes, and mishazacha b'menorah, and then a person takes care of the candles, right? Mishazacha b'ketayris. It sounds like the ketayris, and then we have the Kohen who brings the ketayris. It sounds like the ketayris comes afterwards. This is a Mishnah in Tamid that the ketayris comes after the Neros. So Amavuna Matana Tamid Rabbi Shimon Isha Mitzvah. So Avuna says, no, the Mishnayos of Tamid were taught by a different Tana. They were taught by Rabbi Shimon Isha Mitzvah. He has this shita that the ketayris comes last. But we have there in Maseches Tamid itself, we have a Mishnah that says differently. The Tanan Baal Lekam Mizrachis at Sephonis. So it talks about the Kohen doing the avoda when he's sprinkling, let's say, from the korbanola in the mizbeach hachitzon. So he comes to the north, the northeast corner of the mizbeach, and he dips and he sprinkles the blood. So it goes on both corners, right? Shtei matanos shehein arba, right? No se mizracha tzafona, and he does one sprinkling over there. Then he goes around to the southeast, to the southwest corner, diagonal from the northeast corner, right? No say marava deroma, and he sprinkles over there. Betani Allah Rabbi Shimon Isha Mitzvah, Mishnah Betani Allah and Rabbi Shimon Isha Mitzvah says on that Mishnah Betam Mizrachas Tzafonis, no saying Mizracha Tzafona, that it's not exactly that he does only two dippings, he does one dipping on the northeast corner. Maravis Teromis, and in the southwest corner, no sin Marava, he does two dippings. First, he dips, he sprinkles, now two sprinklings, I should say. First, he does one sprinkling on the west side, no sin Deroma, and then he does a sprinkling on the south side. It's not just one sprinkling, one echad shushnayim. It's two sprinklings that he does on the southwest corner. So we see that Rabbi Shimon Isha Mitzvah is not the one who is the Stam Mishnah in Maseches Tamid, because he's the one who sort of like comments on this Mishnah to give like a different version. Ella Am Rabbi Yochanan Mantana say the Yuma. So we can't say that Rabbi Shimon Isha Mitzvah is the one who is the author of the Mishnayos in Tamid, and therefore that's why it's different from the Mishnah here in Yuma. Rather say the Mishnayos in Tamid were not recorded by Rabbi Shimon ben Mitzvah. Rabbi Shimon ben Mitzvah is the one who recorded the Mishnah and Mishnayos here in Yuma, and that's why the Mishnayos here in Yuma are different. That they show that the Ketoris came first and then the Neros. Mantana say the Yuma, Rabbi Shimon Isha Mitzvah. Rami say the Yuma, But the way we have an internal contradiction within the Mishnayos and Maseches Yuma, because we have a Mishnah that talks about the paisos of which Kohanim are going to do which avoda, and says a payas hasheni. And this, where does this appear? It appears a little bit later, 10 blot from now or so. Payas hasheni, the second light of the day, determined which Kohen was going to shecht the korban tamid. Mishokim Mizoek was going to throw the blood, sprinkle the blood. Me midashim mizbeach pnimi, who's going to clean up the inner mizbeach. Midashim es menorah, who's going to clean up the neros. Mimale evarim lakevish, and who's going to bring the limbs up the ramp. And then the payas hashlishi, and then the last payas indicated that the ketayris would be last. It would come after the menorah. Payas hashlishi, the last lot was for kadosh and ketayris bo. Anybody who didn't bring any coin, didn't bring the ketayris before should join the lottery, because it was like a big deal to get the ketayris. It would make you rich. Right? So that was considered to be, a special zuchus. We wanted every coin to be able to share in the wealth, so to speak. So bo be'apisu, that they would be called up to participate in the lottery. But we see from here that the Ketores, according to the Mishnayos later on in the Masechta, that the Ketores came last. And in this Mishnah, that talks about the order that the Kohen Gadol would be doing the 7 days of his preparation for Yom Kippur, it's clear that the Ketores came first. It says the Makdiris, the Ketores, Umeitivus and Eris. Which one is it? Ketores come last, the Ketores come first. If we saw, I'm a Bailo Kasha. The Bayi says it's not a Kasha because it's only a question vis-a-vis the lighting, vis-a-vis the Hatava, the cleaning up of the candles. The cleaning up of the candles, as we know from what we say every single morning, or some say every single morning, right? That the Bayi have a Masada, have a Masada state of Amarach, Mishpan the Gemara, Mishpan the Abashol, right? Aliba the Abashol, that he would give the order of the avoda of the day, that the cleaning of the 5 candles came before the cleaning of the 2 candles, right? They were split up. Cleaning of the 5 candles, so you could be some of the candles came before the Ketores, and some of the candles came after the Ketores. So lo kasha kam matavas shteineros. The last 2 candles were cleaned up after the Ketores. Kam matavas chamesh neros, and the first 5 candles were cleaned up prior to the bringing of the Ketores. Perfect. You split it in the middle. The main with the Ketores mafsiklu. You mean to say that it was that the cleaning of the candles, what separated the beginning of the cleaning of the candles, the end of the cleaning of the candles was the Ketores? You look at Abaye's version; it wasn't the Ketores; it was the dam atomid, right? It was the sprinkling of the dam atomid. Not the Ketores, right? So Abaye Misad Marach Mishmai the Gemara. Abaye, as we read, in the Seder Kobanos, gives you the whole order. And it was the sprinkling of the dam atomid that separated between the 5 candles and the 2 candles, not the Ketores.
Which Rabbi, which two candles are unique? Is it the middle one, which is the menorah, and the side one that is supposedly lit all the time? Which two?
No, because
which two versus the other 5?
I don't think that this was an issue of Ner Maravi per se, because Ner Maravi sort of stands.
Ner Marav in the middle Ner, I would think those other 2 will be together, and then the other 5 together.
So I honestly am not 100% sure which were the 5 candles and which were the 2 candles, but we had some sort of a separation between the 5 candles and the 2 candles. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that because that's later on in Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph. It says that there was a separation between the first 5 candles and the last 2 candles. So Yetzer Hashem will reserve that, okay, for whoever gets doing the Daf in 18 days when it will be Daf Lamed Gimel. So we'll go into which candles they were. But according to Abaye, it wasn't the Ketores that was in the middle that separated between the 5 candles and the 2 candles, right? But Damatamin Mafsiklu is the Damatamin that was afterwards. And then the Ketores came afterwards. So lo kasha. So we say no. That's because Abaye's whole version was going according to Abashol. But according to the Chachamim, it was the Ketores that was in the middle, and that's how we can reconcile these 2 apparently contradictory passages within Masechtas Yoma. The Tayin lo yetev v'saneas v'chakach yaktir, because we have a brisa that says don't clean up the candles and then do the Ketores. Rather, do the Ketores first and then have the candles cleaned up. And Abashol says, no, you clean up all the candles before the Ketores, not just the 5 candles, the other 2 candles, all 7 candles, like Abaye says, before the Ketores. So my time at the Abashol, we can say it's going according to Aliba de Chachamim. There was a certain portion of the Ketores that was after the candles. So there was a certain portion of the candles that was before the Ketores, and there was a certain portion of the candles, namely the other 2 candles, that was cleaned up after the Ketores. So my time at the Abashol, what's the reason for Abashol to say that the Ketores was only after all 7 candles? Because it says baboker behetibo es haneros. It says in the morning when you clean up the candles, the harder, and after it says that, then the Torah says Yakti Rena, right? Diktira alav Aaron Ketores Samim Baboker Behetibo es haneros Yakti Rena. That after the cleaning of the candles, that's when you would bring the incense. After all the candles. So Baran might come Rachmana, and the Chachamim say no. When the Torah says Behetibo, when the Torah says Behetibo es haneros Yakti Rena, that means that Rabbi Eitan Hatava Tehei Mikdar Ketores. It means that, it means that at the time of the Hatavas Haneros, that there already has to be the Ketores burning. That there's a certain number of candles, these 2 candles, that when you're cleaning them, the Ketores is already burning. And that brings us to 7:45, which is the time that we aspire to finish, and we're finished. So everybody have a wonderful day. Okay. Okay.
Yasher koach. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tomorrow, tomorrow Joe is back, man. Yeah.